Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Healthy Living Happy Life show, which is sponsored by Living Healthy List. And I'm Denise Stiegel, your host here at the Healthy Living Happy Life show. Why do I call it that? Because if we have a healthy life, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy spirit, healthy home, then happiness
Mhm.
isn't too far behind. So I'm really excited. Here at the show, we delve into topics that can only positively affect your health and happiness. My guests are amazing experts in the areas of health, wellness, personal development, and bringing a little bit more fun into life. Because kind of what's the point of doing all that other stuff if you're not having any fun? So, my guest today is going to inject a little bit of spark, joy, and flow into your life. So, I'm really excited for you to meet Rebecca Jo Rushdy. And let me tell you a little bit about Rebecca. So, Rebecca guides fellow empaths to declutter and transform their hearts, minds, and homes into sanctuaries that, here's the keywords, spark, joy, and flow. So, drawing from her experience, she's dedicated to helping other highly sensitive people turn their wounds into wisdom, and their exhaustion into energy. Absolutely love that. Rebecca also facilitates wellness workshops and speaks for corporates, government agencies, and NGOs on the power of decluttering and personal and professional lives, or on our personal and professional lives, so that we can be more focused, more effective, and happy in everything that we do. Rebecca has lived and worked all over the world. She was the first platinum, this is cool, KonMari consultant in Malaysia and in Edinburgh, where she is currently based with her husband and her two lovely daughters. Rebecca attended Parsons School of Design in NYC. You were probably there when I was there in
Yeah.
New York, and held various career roles from luxury retail consulting, totally cool, to events and PR. Con, I love how she's done. You said this. Con marrying
hmm
has been her hobby for the last 10 years, since reading The Life Changing Magic of Tidying Up, seeing the life changing moments of her friends and family. She realized that guiding others to declutter their life and transform their space into sanctuary surrounded by joy is her true calling. So I am so excited for you to meet Rebecca today. So, hey, Rebecca, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much, Denise, for the warm welcome as well. I am just so excited to be on your show today. And, I love everything that you do and how you serve your community as well, because it really is about being able to be in touch with our true self so that we can thrive and serve people from a place of wholeness.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying so. I love what I do. I love helping others. And this show helps me help others in so many different ways and on different levels. So I want to ask you. So I just read your bio, which is amazing. But I want you to tell us a little bit more about who you really are. Like this, bio is great, but there's so much more to who you are and how you got to where you are today. So if you would please share a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, for me personally, I grew up in a really, really tidy household, to the point where like my mom was very on OCD. But what I didn't realize was that when I read Marie Kondo's book 10 years ago, I realized that I had been tidying wrong my entire life. And there is an art form to letting go, because we all know that letting go isn't just about tossing something aside, right? Like getting rid of it. If we don't do it with the right intention, you're actually still holding a piece of that inside of your heart. It's actually calcifying you, and it'll impact your health and well-being. So let's say, for example, it's your belongings, whether it be your belongings or a toxic relationship, if you just like let them go, even though the item or that relationship is long gone, it's if you didn't deal with it and process it in a healthy way, it's still inside of you, right? So it is that art of letting go. And we're using gratitude. So that's what I learned 10 years ago. I was like, wow, like I hadn't been mindful, I hadn't been intentional. And so when we aren't mindful and intentional about how we're letting things go, we're stuck in that pattern. It just keeps on repeating. And for me personally, I was an extreme shopaholic. So I had been a shopaholic since I started independently shopping since I was 8 years old. So that, and I lived in a city where
Yeah.
you're literally in a big shopping, like it's a big shopping mall, essentially, the whole city. I used to live in Hong Kong. So what I realized was, oh wow, like, it is a trauma response, right? Like when anytime that we're binging, whether it be eating, watching, shopping, it can even be overworking as well. We're trying to fill that void. Right. And then so what I realized was that, oh, okay, like, if we're not letting go, if we're not being reflective and introspective about letting go, then the pattern will just keep on repeating. So when I read the book 10 years ago, I was like, wow, the key point to the method is rooted in gratitude. It's all about gratitude because gratitude actually softens the edges of whatever that we find really sticky and really challenging to let go of as well. Um, and then so I applied it. I was actually pregnant at that point, and I went into turbo nesting mode. So I decluttered everything in my house, and I was like, wow, this is amazing because you do feel that amazing lightness as well. Is liberating. And then when we're able to just recognize, we're like, oh, this is what aligns with you. And the beauty of the method is that we're not doing it in a traditional organizing method, which is typically when we approach it traditionally, it will be, what are we getting rid of? Right? We're most of the time we're like, okay, what's not serving us? Let's just get rid of it. But the method actually turns on its head. So we're starting from, what do you want to keep? So then that's the turning point. So we start with, what do we want to keep? And then it just makes it easier that's your barometer of joy. That's why Marie Kondo's tagline is spark joy, right? We start with like the things that are like a resounding yes, like that full body yes. The things that you're like, yes, 100%. And then it just becomes so much easier to be like, okay, the other stuff, not as joyful. But because we start from the things that bring us maximum joy, it's so much easier to let go of the other things. Like you're able to remove that scarcity mindset as well. Because you're like, okay, you know what? I have enough. You're like, oh, I have like, 5 pairs of jeans that I absolutely love, right? And then so the other 20 pairs, you're like, you know what? I never wear it. I'm okay with that. I can live without it. Yeah. So it brings about this, the beauty of it really brings this emotional agility and the emotional readiness to let go. So with the KonMari method, there is a process. So we're not actually going room by room. We're actually doing it by the categories. This is also what sets it apart.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not doing like dining room, living room, bedroom, right? We're going by the clothing, we're going by the books, we're going by the paper. And then you have to actually group everything together. So when you actually have that clear mental audit and inventory of everything that you own, this is where that magic happens, because you're not actually, you actually will eliminate repeat purchases and mindless spending. We've all been there, right? We're like, oh, forget that. We actually have it in our pantry and homes, and we're like, go out and buy another one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it so much in clients' closets and in their homes as well. They're like, I literally forgot that I bought this, so I have to go buy it again.
I've done that with books.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I bought a book. Okay, somebody had said, "Oh, you got to read this book," and I look at it. And I'm like, "Okay, I bought it." So it comes. It's on Amazon. It's on the
Yeah.
shelf. And
Yeah.
then I haven't touched it yet because I'm doing something else, reading two other books at the same time. And then somebody again, like the book comes. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I was going to get that book," and
Yeah.
then only realize that it's sitting on the shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. You already had it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So that's the beauty of it. It's like because it will actually give you that clear mental inventory of everything that you own. So it just becomes easier. Like next time you're in a shop, we are going to get tempted, right? Like we're human, and there's marketing literally around us 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see it, we're just being like, oh, you know what? Like that pink top looks great. And then you're like, oh, actually, I already have like 5 pink tops in my closet. So it just makes it a lot easier to make these mindful decisions. So your purchasing decisions will become more intuitive as well, I would like to say. And, on a practical note, you save a lot of money too. So, but the main thing is what I found is, because I have pivoted recently to working with people who are highly sensitive and empaths as well. The reason why is because I have found that, you work with a lot of people who are on their healing journey, right? Like everyone is committed to their growth, their personal development. But I found that if your physical space is not supporting you, it's going to be magnitudes harder to get to where you want to be. Because one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that simply seeing clutter will increase your cortisol levels. So from the moment that you wake up, if your room is cluttered, you'll just be like, okay, it's depleting you. It's those energy vampires that we were talking about before as
Right.
well, right? Yeah.
And it's amazing. When you and I had our first conversation, I had been going through my closet. Just you get to a certain age and you kind of like go through the closet like, really, am I ever going to wear this? So I
Mm-hmm.
started to go
Mm-hmm.
through with that concept of joy,
Yes.
what brings me joy. And what I ended up doing was I pulled some stuff out that I hadn't worn a long time,
Yeah.
really just didn't love anymore,
Yeah.
and put them on a chair in the bedroom. And
Mm-hmm.
it sat there for a week. And every morning I got up and I looked at that pile and I was like, oh, I got to do something with that pile.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely understand how that energy,
Yeah.
the energy vampires, and
Yeah.
that's first thing in the morning. Like
Yes,
if you
exactly.
have an energy vampire at 6 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon is not going to be a good time for you.
Absolutely. And it becomes that domino effect, right? Because it is zapping you. And like for the clients that I work with who are highly sensitive, because the brain is wired differently, you process things a lot more deeply as well. And as empaths as well, you feel deeply. And so you have limited bandwidth. So this is why it becomes really important that to be able to fine tune the energy management, because even just walking past a pile of something, you're like, oh, I should do something about it. So even that thought alone will actually zap us of our energy. And then, it's the whole thing of, I really prescribe to, like what James Clear says as well about like the 2-minute rule, which is if you have 2 minutes, if you have energy, and if you have 2 minutes, just do it. Because what we don't realize is that actually thinking about it wastes a lot more time and energy, right? And so,
Right. You could do it in
we,
that 2 minutes, or you're thinking about it like half the day.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, and we're coming from the perspective that I think one of the things that we have to rewire is that many people, they have an aversion, right? They're actually filled with fear when they hear the word decluttering or tidying. And so what we're doing is we're actually relearning, rewiring, and coming from that perspective of joy. This is something that actually gives us energy. It's one of the energy givers. Like, yes, you put in a little bit of energy, but it actually boosts you. No one has ever regretted tidying, right? Like you feel so good after, and you feel a lot more, you feel lighter, you feel liberated. Right. And then you realize like it's also this process of I view it as it's almost like having a date with yourself, like how you had mentioned about your clothes too, right? You're like, okay, because it is confronting. It is confronting and looking at the past version of yourself.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And I know you talked about that. You talk about this a little bit on your website, and I think it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I bought those clothes a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm not the same person as I was then. And
Yes.
so, it's again that change, that's always happening, that constant
Exactly.
change.
Yes.
And I think that's something to talk about is like people are so uncomfortable with change.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
And
scary.
yeah, and this will actually it strengthens our muscles to embrace change, to be able to
Mhm.
let go, because change is constant, just like how we were talking about
Mhm.
prior to hitting the record button, right? Change is the only constant in life. But and then when we're going against it, then that's where the struggles, the challenges come about. But when we're able to embrace it, we're like, okay, because one of the things I talk about to people is like, yeah, you let something go. We can get excited about upgrading, like all nearly everything. I wouldn't say 100%, but nearly everything is replaceable. Like, especially in the advent of like internet, right? Like we can get everything. Yeah.
You can get anything. It's actually funny. I Where I live in Minnesota,
Yeah.
I'm about 80 miles from the city. So I
Mhm.
could drive up to the city or I could
Yeah.
find it online.
Yes.
And I have found things that are meaningful. Like
Yeah.
there's a teacup that I've been looking for.
Mhm.
It's part of a set. Well, I was able to find it.
Yeah.
And that brought me joy. That brought me so much excitement because now I have
Mhm.
this complete set. And it's
Isn't it
something,
amazing?
it's something that I love. It really is. I'm a teetotaler.
I
Um,
love that.
at least during the day, I'm a teetotaler.
I love
And
that
just
so much.
having this tea set just makes me happy. I actually have
Yeah.
another tea set. You can't see it, it's on the side over there. Just a
Oh,
cute little tea
amazing.
set. Just it makes me happy.
Yeah. And that's what the method is all about. Because when you're able to define your joy and to own your joy as well, this is where that shift happens. And that's why Marie Kondo's book is called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, because people are just like, wow, like, people have quit jobs, travel across the world, got divorced as well, like all, and in a really positive way, because
Mhm.
they're finally able to stop tolerating and live in accordance to your truth, right? And then I think one thing worth mentioning is that I work with people from across the board. So like, I've worked with people as young as 2 years old, all the way to their 80s as well. And one of the things that I have noticed is that, especially for children, around the age of 7 and 8 years old, that's when they start to develop their people pleasing tendencies,
Mm.
because they need to feel safe, right? Like literally, they
Right.
need a roof over their head and to be
Mhm.
fed. So they start to develop these tendencies because they're like, okay, so then their own voice gets diminished, and then they
Mm.
get influenced by the media, the adults, their friend groups.
Mhm.
Um, and that's why I really love this method, because, regardless of people that I work with, like for example, when I work with young people, it's really beautiful to see them be able to have the safe space where they're able to define what brings them joy. Because as a consultant, I don't influence the decisions. Like it's all about making positive, confident decisions. And I often say to parents, I was like, the hardest thing about letting your kids KonMari is holding your tongue. Because for us, it's so easy to be like, oh, but your Aunt Jane gave that to you. Oh, do you know how much money I spent on this? Right. And then we're invalidating, their feelings and their truth. So that's one of the things I often say to parents. I say that, that's going to be the hard part, to be able to hold your tongue and to hold space for them. And then for people who are like older, like I've had elderly clients, where senior citizen clients, where it's been amazing to see them shed all of this, all of the things that no longer serve them. Like all it's so, and we live in a culture that's like guilt ridden, right? And it's so shame based as well.
Yeah,
So
that's so true. Especially,
yeah.
I can see it's interesting when you say about the young children. I can see
Mhm.
that, and I can even hear like times when I was a child.
Yeah.
Um, oh, so and so bought you that, or and I remember a couple of instances pretty vividly.
Mhm.
And it's funny, I still have things that somebody gave me
Yeah.
tucked away,
Yeah.
but you're right, that guilt piece, like, oh, so and so gave me that,
Yeah.
and it wasn't something that I had asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a piece that I think is interesting. If you give a gift, you give from love,
Yes.
and that person accepts it. But if it's not really their what they would want, it's okay. It's and they pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
We can't feel guilt or disappointment in
Yeah.
that.
And that's where the power of gratitude comes into play.
Mhm.
And and this is actually what Marie Kondo says as well, because when the gift exchange happens, the the sentiment has been passed on. So you become the true owner of that physical object. A lot of times, because that's how we were raised, right? We're like taught to keep things because otherwise you're rude or whatever it might be. And one of the things I actually encourage clients and everyone is to create a gifting box. I've actually had a client where she had a gifting closet because she had just that many gifts,
Mhm.
and don't feel guilty about regifting, because what it does is actually amplifies the power of giving. Like, you have received this beautiful gift, like the sentiment, right? You can accept that love, but you don't actually need that physical object. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't impact your relationship
Mhm.
any less.
What I also, as you're talking about this, what I also feel is energy, like
Yes,
positive energy. That it
totally.
was given in gratitude with
Mm-hmm.
the sentiment you accept in gratitude, but the energy, the good and positive energy flow is to pay it forward or pass it, give it to
Absolutely.
somebody else, as
And it is
opposed to
all about positivity, and it is all about gratitude as well. So, that's one of the main things that I have found so powerful about this practice, because we are training our brains to be able to look at life through the lens of gratitude. So, because we are hardwired for negativity, right? It's to keep us safe. We all know that, and we can accept that because that's how our brains are hardwired.
right.
But we
And
can actually rewire it.
you're right. And in my phase of the world, the
Mhm.
mental fitness piece that I
Yeah.
talk about, for every one negative thought or
Hmm.
emotion, you need to experience three positives.
Yes. Yes.
So it's really important to even recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one negative thing, three positives. And sometimes we have to look for those.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about seeking it out as well. So, like, even if you're giving this example of, like, someone gives you a gift that is something that you might not need or something that you don't really enjoy, we can still, everything is a blessing or a lesson. So
Mm,
we can also take away the lesson from it. So when we're letting it go, it's like, okay, you know what? This is not for me because X, Y, and Z, right? Like,
mhm.
and we can also carry that forward as well in terms of how we want to give to other people. For example, for me, like, what I've learned is I prefer to gift people something experiential, or food, for example, because you can also share food, right? Like, even if they can't eat it, they can share it with other people. So those are, and I only get physical gifts if it's something that they really, really need. So we can be really intentional as well. So this actually, like, shapes and shifts. And we're also able to recognize that the memories can last without the memento. So yeah. So, but actually,
I love that.
sentimental items is actually one of the hardest categories to
Mhm.
declutter. So when we're doing it the KonMari way, we're actually going from clothing, which is the light workout, and then there's 5 categories in total. So it
Okay.
goes from clothing, books, paper. Komono means miscellaneous in Japanese, which is
Mhm.
everything else under the sun. Like, for example, kitchen items, hobby items, seasonal
Oh, okay.
items, like everything else, right? Your medications, whatever it is. And then the last one is sentimental, because that's a high
Mm,
intensity. So I think a lot of the times why people have an aversion to decluttering is because they haven't been doing it the right way, like in a really gentle way. It's kind, I like to compare it to fitness, because we all find it, like, I find it a struggle to work out. So I completely understand. So like, of course we know it's good for us, but if you're going to go straight into the high intensity workout, you're going to set yourself up for failure.
yeah, I can help you with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's all about, like, finding the joy, right? Like, in everything that we do.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is. Exactly. So, I think the word joy, I love the word joy. It's a
Mhm.
cute little three-letter word. It's so simple, but it
Yeah.
has so much impact.
Yes.
Um, Joy in your physical space, joy in the clothes that you
Mhm.
wear, joy in the people that you spend time with.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
all of your physical space, your emotional space. And of course, joy for me is that exercise, that movement piece,
Yes.
because that again, that keeps the energy. And I think the underlying piece of all of this that we're talking about is that energy, is to
Yes.
keep that energy moving, keep energy flowing in a positive way.
Yes, absolutely. And it also goes into, because it's this it's a process that really delves, it is confronting because you are facing yourself, right? But you're able to have that deeper understanding of yourself. Like, one of the things I often share is, what sparks joy for me might not spark joy for you. And that's okay. It's not a one size fits all, right? But because it's going to look different, but um, it's so fluid in terms of it's adaptable for everyone because we are defining our own joy, and that leads to more acceptance and more harmony between people, because I don't expect you to be like me and you don't expect me to be like you, and vice versa. And this is what really creates that beautiful energy, because even with exercise, for example, right, like one of the things that when I work with people, then we'll be like, okay, we do you will tidying is a necessary self-care. Exercising is also a necessary self-care, right? Because I think one of the things I want to highlight is that self-care has become this big thing, like on social media. But people only see it as like face masks, holidays, like a bubble bath, whatever it might be, which is all great as well. But we can't forget about the necessary health self-care. And so when we're able to look at it from that perspective as well and lean into it, it just shifts everything. And then so you're able to define, you're like, you know what? High intensity workouts might be for someone else, right? But for me, I like doing Pilates and yoga. And I also follow my moon cycle as well because I'm really affected by my hormones. So one of the things I've been leaning into is like, okay, when I know is that time of the month, then I'm going to do more gentle workouts as well. And so that helps a lot because you're not doing it from this place of being deprecating,
Right. Like,
like
now I
you're
have
not,
to do this.
yeah, or like, oh, I'm a failure because I didn't do like, my 30-minute cardio today. Right. And then
Right.
so it's all about being reconnecting the mind and the body. So you have that in awareness about yourself as well. And it all comes back to, I often say that you're not decluttering to have this tidy home. It's really to have it's the training ground. So you start from your home to get a better understanding of yourself. And then you're able to change your future behavior patterns as well and your thought patterns.
It's funny. It's such a simple concept, but it's also very new because it's
Yes.
not how we have been taught.
Yep. Yep.
How many times when you were a little kid, go tidy your room, and you
Yeah.
had stuff all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a chore,
Yep.
but
Yep.
it also seemed to be a punishment.
Yes. So a lot of people have this negativity, right? Like, and I often work with a lot of people who carry this forward into their adulthood. So, they view it as they're scared to, like let's say that I'm working with the wife or the husband, and then the partner would be like, oh my gosh, like Rebecca's coming. Is she gonna make me throw everything away? I'm like, first of all, I don't force you to like do that. You make these choices yourself. But it's because they have this negative connotation to it.
Mhm.
So what we're doing is we're actually relearning it, and it's like what I mentioned earlier as well. So the when you're setting the foundation, it's called a tidying festival because Marie Kondo in Japanese is called katatsuke matsuri, and it's a literal translation. So tidying festival because there's a lot of positive psychology infused in it. She wants it to be something that's really positive. And then the maintenance is actually called joy checking.
I
So
love
what
it.
you were doing with your clothes, you were joy checking your clothes, because you're like, oh, okay, like
Mhm.
these ones, like I kept it a couple months ago, but I'm okay. Like I can let go of it now. And that's where it strengthens your letting go capabilities. And I think especially as people who are highly sensitive or, recovering people pleasers or empaths, it's this beautiful opportunity to practice saying yes to the things that light you up and to say no to the things that don't serve you. Because how many times have we been in the position where we say yes to the things that we actually want to say no to?
Too
And it's
often,
because
especially as women,
too often,
we do it.
especially as women, 100%, so especially as women, because it's so deeply ingrained in us. And so we're also able to reflect and honor our ancestors as well, because they never had this opportunity to actually speak their truth. Right. So then we have to actually train ourselves and to be able to break the cycles as well. And for me, I'm raising two young girls now. My kids are 7 and 9 years old. And they're both highly sensitive too. So I want them to use their sensitivity as a source of strength. and not use it from this place of trying to bend over backwards for everybody, because that's usually what happens when it's not cultivated in a healthy way.
I think it's really exciting that you understand that, because there's so often with highly sensitive people that they've grown up, in a home where, their parents didn't understand them, why they were different, everybody's different. But they just didn't understand how to talk with them,
Yeah.
or really just be on their side, and sometimes just to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I
it
think it's
becomes,
beautiful.
yeah. And it actually will become that, for people, they will, and I was talking to a friend about it earlier because I'm reading this book right now. It's called Sensitive. And so for people who are highly sensitive, but they are in this nurturing environment, then it will amplify their sensitivity, but in a healthy way, right? Like they're able to use that as a superpower. And for people who are in these toxic family environment, then it will also be heightened, but from a survival point of view, because they're
Which,
scared, you know?
right.
They're
Yeah.
afraid of setting people off as well. And like, especially like, even though for highly sensitive people, it is divided 50-50 in terms of female, male, but we know that for male, it is a lot harder, right? Because it's seen as a weakness. And in our culture with toxic masculinity, this is
Mhm.
something that is not condoned. So they have to, shove it down and hide it and then try to be all macho and stuff, right? And then
Mhm.
that's where we have a lot of people who are, they are high functioning, but then they're operating from a trauma response. So
Mhm.
yeah, and then you see it a lot, like, as I see it a lot. I mean, think about all like I often think about like politicians and like, people who are in like these business leader positions as well. And it's because they're, you feel as though when you feel like the acceptance and love is conditional, you're not able to give yourself that love yourself. Your self-worth is so diminished, right? And I think that's the baseline of it. That's the foundation of it. And I'm sure it's very similar to what you do with your clients as well, because it always starts from self-worth. And so when we're tying it back to our homes, we're just practicing. It's like, okay, what do you want to align yourself with? And it's just something as simple as like, these are the things that light me up. These are the things that charge me up. These are things I can gratefully let go of. And then so when you get older, like when I work with kids, especially, this is why I often tell parents as well, these kids, when they're in a toxic work environment, when they're in a relationship that doesn't serve them, they're able to walk away from it rather than feeling like they have to tolerate it.
It's great that we can understand this now
Yeah.
and help young kids, so
100%.
they don't have to go through that trauma phase, because it
Yeah.
is, at some point it seems like, the fight or flight is
Yeah.
always activated.
Yeah.
Fight or flight's activated, high cortisol levels. What
Mhm.
happens with that? There's trouble sleeping, there's
Yeah.
anxiety, there's, so
Mhm.
many illnesses, in
Definitely.
waking,
Yes.
all of those things, and people don't realize that
It's all
that
correlated.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, the more awareness we have about it. And so we're able to also just recognize that, yes, we know that letting go is good for us, right? Like everyone talks about all these things, but knowing and doing are two different things. So that's why I say that our homes are actually our training ground. We can actually practice, and it's this beautiful, like, for anyone who ever feels a little bit like anxious, we've been in front of the screen for too long as well. One of my favorite hacks is just 10 minutes, go and put things away, go and wash the dishes, or, my favorite, or like even just go and take a shower. But even those kind of little simple activities will help to lower your cortisol levels and it'll activate your alpha state of mind as well. So then this is also why like we need to have that system in place, because when you're picking up things around the house, when you know that there's a place to put it back in, you're using the least amount of energy to figure out and like, to tidy up, right? Like, because that's how clutter accumulates. The clutter magnet happens when you're holding a big pile of things and there's no defined homes for everything. So then what humans do is we're just like, find any flat surface, plonk it down, and then that's where that mountain starts to pile up. Right. So
Mhm.
that's just like an easy thing. It's just like, okay, like when you develop this awareness, it's so much easier to just short circuit that draining feeling, when we've been in front of the computer or scrolling for too long and we're just like, okay, let me just go do something with my hands first, because that actually activates a different part of your brain as well.
It's funny that you say that, because what I end up doing is I fold laundry.
Yes, yeah,
So
that's one of my favorite ones too.
so one time I fold the laundry, and then whatever I have to do, and then I put the laundry away. And
Yeah.
sometimes I put the laundry in, and there's only two of us that live here, but it seems like we have like two loads of laundry every day. Workout clothes, you can't leave
Yep.
them.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's interesting. I love this concept because it's it's opposite of what all of the business people will tell you. If you want to be successful in business, you have to focus, focus, focus.
The
And
hustle.
that's draining, draining, draining.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's that, and that takes all the joy away from it.
Yes.
If the days that I'm in front of the screen all day long,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I'm tired, I'm drained. And there is, the joy is kind of by 2 o'clock, there is no more joy there.
Yeah.
Even though and these are things that I enjoy doing. I
Yes.
love writing.
Yeah.
But if I have to write all day long and I've been on the computer all day long, if I don't take those breaks, by 3 o'clock, I don't even want to talk to anybody.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely agree. And then that's where, like, that's the mind body connection as well, right? Because rather than you have to, one of the things that I prescribe by is body first, business second, right? So then that's where you're able to charge up. Like, people have, there's a negative connotation to rest, but I don't think it's true. And I actually recorded something recently. It's called the 7 types of rest that you didn't know that you needed. And people don't realize that, like, okay, for example, being out in nature, having nourishing conversations, like right now, that's also a form of rest, right? And then also, just having sensory rest too, where you just shut everything off too. Like, all of these things are different types of rest. Spiritual rest, that's, being of service, meditating, for example, as well. So many different types, but when we have this mind body disconnect, it's really hard to lean into the things that actually nourish and charge us up versus deplete us, because we're actually not operating from that baseline of our true self.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Wow, this is cool. I know we're running out of time, but
Yeah.
I have a question before we start to wrap up.
Mhm.
So when you're working with someone, say
Mhm.
there's a couple, but you're working with one of the people
Yeah.
and they're moving forward,
Mhm.
they're feeling good.
Mhm.
How do you what do you tell that person who you're working with, when the other person may not be quite on board yet?
Oh, yeah, I love this question because it's like actually the number one question that I get all the time. People are always like, how do I make my wife, husband, in-laws, children declutter? And I always say lead by example, because once you start on your own and you start with your own things, then that's why the method is so beautiful, because clothing, it's your clothes, like no one can make a decision for you but yourself. And then the other things, be respectful, don't declutter other people's things, just do your own things first. And from your own energy shift, people will just they'll just get naturally curious. So by the time you kind of get into the common space, the shared areas as well, then they might be like, hey, what's going on? Oh, or you might be like, hey, these are your things. What do you think about it? If they're like, oh, don't touch it, I just want to keep it, fine, hold space for them, right? And that's what we do, because, for example, like my father-in-law, he's not really down with KonMari, but then they recently downsized. I like to say right sized, but so they recently right sized and from a 5 bedroom to a 2 bedroom. And so, and then he said to me, and I've been, in their family for, gosh, like nearly 20 years now, right? And so he was like, I guess I'm just going to have to get rid of things. And I'm like, wow, and I'm here for you. I'm holding space for you. So, and he was hospitalized during the time when we were downsizing, like when we're moving. So I told him, I was like, don't worry, because it's all about making people feel safe. Right. Because people have, I don't like, we don't know what people have gone through in the past as well. So a lot of times it comes from the fact that people had decluttered their things without consent.
Mm.
So then I told him, I was like, hey, don't worry. I'll do your office for you. We won't get rid of anything. I won't even get rid of a single receipt. I'll put it into boxes. I'll put it into storage for now. So when you're ready and out of the hospital, then you can go through it in your own time. Right. And so that's what I mean by holding space, because it is harder, especially when it's like someone that you're close to. It's so easy to judge, right? Like we are our best and worst selves with the people that we love.
True.
So we're just like, you know what, like hold space. Like if it takes them 20 years, so be it. But then, but it's all about just work on yourself, right? Like, because that's where people will feel inspired and they will naturally get curious.
Perfect. I love that's such a great answer. And so easy for us to accept and move forward with. So thank
Yes.
you for that.
Yes, absolutely. And not try to force, right? It's like the
Right,
non-attachment,
exactly.
what we're
Clean your
doing.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so we do need to wrap up.
Yeah.
Would love for you if you had any last things you wanted to mention before we close out. And then before we do close out, I'll have you tell us how people can find you, how they can work with you. And I hope that this is the first of many conversations.
Thank you so much, Denise. So, um, recently I've been on Insight Timer. So for people who are meditators, you can find me on Insight Timer under Rebecca Jo Rushdy. I do live talks and I'm going to come out with a course on Insight Timer as well. So just ways to support everyone in their decluttering journey to come home to themselves. And to create that sanctuary. You can also find me on my website, sparkjoyandflow.com. And I'm also really responsive on social media as well. So at Spark Joy and Flow. And I'm looking forward to connecting with everybody. If you have any questions, like any burning questions, feel free to contact me. And I'm also looking to having many more conversations with you, Denise.
Yes, it'll be so much fun. This is great. I love these conversations and these conversations spark joy in me, and they connect us. You're in Scotland, I'm in Minnesota, and here we are in the same place having this great meaningful conversation, which is just fabulous. So thank you so much for your time and your joy. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Denise.
So, for our listeners, thank you for listening to today's edition of Healthy Living, Happy Life show. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on video on YouTube at Living Healthy List. We're here every week on Wednesdays. So please, if you love what you hear, click the little bell and you'll get notified on YouTube the next time a video comes available. We really appreciate you. If you have any questions, comments, please, you can connect with me on my website, livinghealthylist.com. Right there, you can send an email to contact me. Any questions that you have for me, for Rebecca, if you don't get in touch with her there, you can always send it my way and I will connect you with her. And if you have another topic that you want to talk about, let me know and I'll make sure we find that perfect expert to help you find that healthy, happy life that you have been searching for. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you again. Thanks, Rebecca.